Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. I'm Ben, and that is my 2025 Suzuki DRZ4S, and this is a safety recall notice hot off of the Suzuki legal team's press. So today we're going to take a look at this and talk about how I knew about this, well, months ago. So if any of you guys are unfamiliar with me and the channel, I make dual sport, motorcycle, e-bike, and snowmobile content here on the channel. I've been doing it full-time for nearly 2 years now, and I mainly focus on motorcycles like the DRZ4S here. I've also got a DR650, an XR650L, a 701 Enduro, and a TW200, and essentially I ride them and test them out, compare them to each other, do review videos on them, but I also sort of test them to see what type of modifications or accessories I think would be helpful, and essentially I turn them into light adventure dual sport motorcycles, and I bring you guys along on all those adventures when I'm testing them. So if that sounds interesting to you, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. I'd love to have you guys watching along each week. Before I was blessed with this incredible opportunity, I worked in the engineering department of a mid-sized manufacturing company for about 12 years. My degree is in mechanical design, which has nothing to do with wrenching on anything. I'm not a mechanic. I am someone who was trained to design things on a computer with computer-aided design software, either in 2D or 3D. In my old life, I did everything from shop and product support, as well as special design requests, to new product development, and my title when I left there was engineering specialist, but I'm not an engineer. And like I said, I'm certainly not a trained or professional mechanic, but what this does all mean is that I do have a little bit of idea of what goes on inside of a company who manufactures things. My industry was very different from the motorcycle industry, of course, but I think a lot of it probably still correlates, and so I think I can kind of shed some light on what's going on here. And even though I'm, again, not a trained mechanic, my observation skills and little bit of wrenching skills that I've sort of, again, taught myself were more than enough to notice that there was a bit of an issue with the DRZ4S way back on August 22nd. So if we take a look at the channel here and move to the shorts section here and scroll down, you can see that I put out 2 different warning videos when I noticed that there were some issues with the DRZ4S here. And the first one goes over, I think, exactly what Suzuki is noticing now and sending this recall out about, but I also included that a little bit in the second one here. So let's check this one out quick. So I'm finally back in the garage trying to get to work on what I set out to do when I put the DRZ4S up on the stand here. But I first had to make a quick short after I realized that the fasteners for my rear reservoir for the rear master cylinder for the brake were a little bit loose, which is why we've got this bit of residue stuck there to the front of it. So I figured after I checked that, I should check the front reservoir. These were also a bit loose, and we don't have any sort of residue, I guess, that I noticed anyways. I don't know where the breather is for this one. A little bit hard to see, but there's the breather. So no fluid actually coming out of here, but still definitely something that could eventually cause a problem if you're not careful. So definitely make sure to check these, and then, like I'm going to be doing, I would say probably keep an eye on them. I don't know exactly what's going on, why those would both be loose. To me, it seems like maybe they just weren't that tight from the factory. I mean, you are supposed to check every single fastener after a certain amount of miles. It's just part of the break-in process, but it seems a little bit odd that it was that loose that quick. I don't even have 600 miles on this thing yet, so definitely something to keep an eye on and remember. And now, obviously, we know that this is not an isolated incident just with my motorcycle, but it is an actual widespread problem. And this letter basically says that during the manufacturing process, the rear brake master cylinder reservoir cap screws were not sufficiently tightened to the correct torque specification. They're not saying anything about the front reservoir, and the front on mine didn't seem nearly as loose. Like I showed in the short, it wasn't actually leaking. And if you guys are unfamiliar, essentially that little cap sits on top of a little rubber diaphragm, and that basically encapsulates and seals off the extra bit of brake fluid that a master cylinder needs to carry around, because as you use the brakes and the pads sort of thin out a bit, then you need to send a little bit more fluid down into the piston, which is inside of the actual brake caliper itself. And when that fills up, that's what sort of does the squeezing motion for the pads. And like I showed, what had happened on my bike is you have a little bit of a tiny breather hole that basically just allows, or is supposed to allow, air inside of the top of that diaphragm, so under the cap, but not inside where the liquid, the brake fluid itself is. But what had happened on mine is it got loose enough that there was a little bit of fluid that was able to sort of leak out, which is what I noticed. And like I mentioned, I just tightened mine back down. This is essentially telling me that I can take it into the dealer and they'll do it for me. It's certainly not something that I would say you want to ride around with because you never know when it's going to loosen up enough where you're actually going to start to lose fluid or get dirt inside of there. It's definitely not a good situation. As far as a recall goes, this is pretty small. A loose fastener on a dual sport motorcycle is something that I think most people just kind of learn to sort of look for and expect. On a bike with a single cylinder engine and knobby tires, you just kind of get used to basically putting Loctite on just about everything. I did not Loctite these, and I don't know that I would recommend that since you're so close to your brake fluid. That's probably not a good idea. I don't know exactly what would have went down in the manufacturing facility. It sounds like they were torquing them down and it just wasn't to the proper spec, so I don't know if they didn't have the right number or if the tool that they were using for it wasn't calibrated properly or just had the wrong torque setting in it to begin with, and they didn't know that it was going to be an issue until people started actually riding the bikes and they started to see some vibrations and backed themselves out. A fastener that small, you really can't put very much torque on without just snapping them off, so I'm sure there's just kind of a fine line there. And essentially what happens when a manufacturer becomes aware of an issue like this, either directly from consumers or through their sales reps, or in this case it would be through the dealerships, they take that data in, and if it's an issue with something important or important to safety, I suppose, like a braking system, obviously they're going to put a little bit higher priority on that. But essentially what they do is take a look at how many items or products or whatever would be affected and the severity of the issue, and then decide whether or not it's worth doing a big safety recall like this. This obviously isn't going to take a whole lot of parts. It's mostly going to be labor that they're going to have to pay for, because when you take your bike in and the dealer does it for you for free, like this says it, they're going to, the Suzuki still has to pay the dealer for the man hours to do that. So basically going through all that data and even just collecting it in the first place is what kind of slows something like this down, and that's sort of why I went ahead and just put those shorts out right away. And I did hear from quite a few of you guys that you did also have some issues with that, and obviously, like I said, it is definitely a wide enough spread issue and a big enough issue that they're doing the recall for it. So definitely something to keep an eye on, but I think it's also just a good thing to sort of always keep in the back of our minds and realize that whether it's a bike that's fresh off of the line like the DRZ4S or my XR650L that I'm the second owner of, you just never really know when a fastener is going to loosen up. So it's always just a good idea to kind of take responsibility for your own safety and make sure that you're at least kind of keeping a close eye on your bike. And of course, like I said, I'm not a mechanic, and I don't think you have to be either. Of course, you don't want to be doing something to the bike that might cause you issues instead of saving you issues. But I think it's important as dual sport riders, people that are possibly going to go out on a longer adventure ride in the woods, to have basic tools and the knowledge of how basic things on a motorcycle like the braking system work. So if you run into an issue like this, you can repair it while you're out in the field. Of course, some people are just always going to feel safest taking it into a dealer, and if that's you, then I would say just make sure that you're taking it into the dealer often enough that you're not going to run into a situation like this that you might have to address on your own or possibly put yourself into a dangerous situation. So stay safe out there. Hopefully this video was helpful to you guys. If it was, let me know down in the comments, and hit that like button. That really helps out. If you guys want to make sure you see more videos from me on these awesome dual sport motorcycles out exploring this beautiful world God created for us, then don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. Otherwise, take care, stay safe, stay swanky, and get out there and enjoy this beautiful world any chance you get. We'll catch you guys in the next one.